Ryanair is predicting a profit decline this year, even as earnings rose by 10% over the past 12 months. That's as a pilot shortage forced Europe's biggest discount carrier to accept unionisation and increase pay. Michael O'Leary is the CEO of the company. He joins us in our London studio. Michael, good to see you this morning. So you've guided the market for profits for 2019, 1.25 to 1.35. You use a phrase, you're pessimistic side of cautious. Michael, what exactly does that mean? Could it get worse in terms of the guidance that you've given us, or what happens to push you to more pessimism?
I mean, a lot depends on what happens with oil, Manus. You know, we're well hedged for the next 12 months out to March. We're 90% hedged at about $59 a barrel for the out to March 19. After that, currently spot prices are up or close to $80 a barrel. Now, I think that's going to lead to a significant shakeout of the industry as early as this winter. Some of those loss-making airlines who couldn't make money when oil was at $40 a barrel certainly can't survive this winter with oil at $80 a barrel. And so it's the rate and speed of that shakeout which will determine future earnings. For the moment, we're being pessimistic on pricing. We are assuming that nobody disappears this winter, which I think is probably unrealistic. But there will be above average capacity growth in Europe for the next 12 months. And so we think fares will be flat, which is good news for customers. That contrasts with most of the rest of the industry who are more optimistic on airfares, guiding for future airfare increases. There's no doubt that fares will rise, but there tends to be a 12-month lag between fuel and airfares. So I think it's a question of timing.
OK, I've got this chart. Good morning to you, Michael. I've got this chart that shows the jet fuel price. So you're talking about, oil prices on the rise, and this clearly being reflected in what jet fuel is doing. You've talked about your hedging. So how much of a concern? I mean, this sounds like it could be a positive story for Ryanair if we did see this damaging the competition, taking capacity out of the market, and you surviving. But you don't see it that way, right?
Well,
now.
We'll certainly survive. We're hugely profitable, with the lowest.
But what I mean is others not, but you managing to capitalise.
There's absolutely no question. The question is that what is the rate and scale, the pace at which others will disappear from the market? I mean, you take airlines like Norwegian, who were hugely loss-making last year with oil at $40 a barrel. They're unhedged. I mean, the losses explode at $80 a barrel. But does Norwegian go bust and is grounded? Or will there be taken out? I mean, IAG has taken a 5% stake in Norwegian. Will IAG rescue it, which may slow the rate of capacity, will slow the capacity growth in Norwegian rather than grounding it? We don't know. And those will be key issues for the next 12 months.
Michael, we'll get you a glass of water there. You sound like a man that needs one. Have a good cough there. Don't worry, I'm famed for very long questions. So if I speak for a long time, they'll get you a glass of water and we'll both be off to the races, literally, together. Good. There you go. We've managed. You got 16 buys, 4 holds and 4 sells. Michael, you mentioned Norwegian there. Why do you think Willie Walsh is interested in Norwegian? I've written down here, I can't tell you who gave me this particular intonation, but do you think he's gone mad?
Look, Willie's very clever, and his track record suggests that he doesn't do silly things. But I mean, I would question the timing of the 5% stake in Norwegian. It was described by one analyst in recent weeks as investing in Norwegian is like catching a falling knife, which I think is pretty accurate. And I think the danger here is Norwegian would probably have had to be significantly restructured or go into administration in the next 12 months. Now, if IAG are investing there, I think the bondholders in Norwegian, it has about $4.5 billion of net debt, will be much more difficult to deal with if they think there's a big rich brother like IAG coming over the hill. But, I have learned always to respect Willie Walsh's views. He has a terrific track record. And certainly Norwegian is a good strategic fit for an IAG, for a Lufthansa. There are some competition crossovers in places like Spain where, IAG is very large with Iberia and Vueling, and Norwegian has big bases in Madrid and Barcelona. So I think issues like that would be a challenge. But I think the key issue for the industry is, we have been seeing capacity in Europe grow at above market or above GDP growth rates for the last number of years. Number of airlines like Ryanair are very profitable, and large number of airlines are loss-making. Alitalia is in administration, Norwegian is loss-making. We need to continue that process of shaking out those competitors. And frankly, $80 a barrel is something I think that will accelerate that process, which will be good over the medium term, even if it will be bad for guidance in the next 12 months.
So you were interested for a while in Alitalia, stepped away from that. You've been very scathing of the Norwegian model, as Manus was just suggesting there. Were you ever in talks with Norwegian? Norwegian ever interested in buying them, showing them how Ryanair does things?
No. I mean, the problem for Norwegian is it is too big, it is growing too fast, and the more it grows, the more money it loses. I mean, we are not interested in an airline that has a net debt of $4.5 billion that can't make money.
Michael, can I ask you about the other one line? When we broke these numbers this morning, Ryanair will restrict non-EU holders' voting rights in a hard Brexit. So it draws me immediately to the first part of the question is, are you now having a base case scenario of a hard Brexit? Is that rising in your estimate?
I mean, yes, it is rising in our estimate. But, I think on balance, you would think common sense will prevail in the Brexit discussions between the UK and Europe. But, the Brexit discussions here have not been characterised by a lot of common sense thus far. We remain concerned that there is a risk of a hard Brexit as early as March 19. The UK really needs to get its skates on. It still hasn't explained how it will, the customs linkage post March 19. Now, if there's a transition agreement agreed that takes us from March 19 or April 19 to December 2020, great, nothing changes. But I think there is a real and appreciable risk that there will be a slip, that the negotiations will not be successful, and that there will be a hard Brexit here in March 19. In those circumstances, we have the power, and we're signalling it on this week's roadshow to investors, that we'll disenfranchise non-EU shareholders. They will not be allowed to vote because it's imperative that we maintain both ownership and control remains within the EU holders.
So that's what you're suggesting. You're considering scrapping voting rights for UK shareholders in the case of a hard Brexit. Have you had soundings from UK shareholders? What have they suggested that they would do? Hang on to those shares regardless, or they'd be tempted to sell?
No, but look, I mean, each shareholder has his own decision to make. I mean, it's very clear, I think, that both our US and our UK shareholders like the Ryanair story. They have been tremendously, it has been a very profitable investment for them. I don't think they'll be that worried about their voting being restricted. But if some of them are, then fine, sell your shares.
Michael, one other airline which is in the eye of the storm, you've got labour issues of your own and unions to contend with, but Air France has been sent a very clear warning shot from the ministerial level, which is, you are not on the roster for bailout. I mean, is this the beginning? You, myself and Anna, we've often talked about the flag carriers. You've often said one of them will take a thumping. Is this the moment that Air France KLM enters the wolf's mouth?
I don't think so. I mean, firstly, we don't have labour issues. We did agree in December to recognise unions. We have, in the last 5 months, though, put in place 5-year pay deals with all of our pilots, all of our cabin crew. We are still working through the process of recognising unions, but we don't have a labour problem. People are very happy with the pay increases that they're earning, that they're enjoying at the moment, and our pay is now ahead of the market for certainly the low-cost 737 space. Air France, Alitalia are the kind of the recurring stories in European aviation. The government says we won't give you another bailout, and then they give them another bailout. I mean, I don't believe any French government when it says it won't bail out Air France, and nor does the Air France unions believe them. It is a recurring nightmare in France. The unions are crazy. Crazy. It's not just the Air France unions. You look at the French air traffic controllers who've been on strike every weekend for the last 6 weekends, despite the fact that they have nothing on their agenda other than going on. It's not that they need any demands for pay increases. It's a politically motivated strike. So France continues to be a basket case. Macron reforms need to be effected and implemented. But there's, we are heading for a summer of significant challenges there. I feel great sympathy for the management of Air France. It is very difficult to run that company where the unions don't really see the management as being the management. They see the politicians as being the ultimate owners and the managers. And nobody believes that the French government will not bail out Air France, most notably the unions.
So that's the Air France story. You've managed to secure part of Air Berlin with the deal with Niki Lauda.
Yeah.
What are your plans for this airline? You plan to keep the Lauda Motion brand, for example? Does that live on?
I mean, the great thing about Lauda Motion is it's an Austrian-based AOC. It's an Airbus operator. So, for the first time time, it allows us an opportunity to develop a relationship with Airbus. We've been a Boeing company for the last 32 years. It has a lot of very valuable slots in Vienna, at a lot of the German airports, and in Palma de Mallorca. Now, it's a small operation. I mean, this summer it'll only be 20 aircraft. We think it will double or treble in size to 50 or 60 aircraft over the next 3 or 4 years, subject to us being able to secure additional Airbus aircraft. And it will be a very nice, very profitable operation that we have acquired at a pretty low cost out of the Air Berlin bankruptcy. I mean, Lufthansa had agreed to buy it for, I think, 160 or nearly 200 million. We've picked it up, not the same scale, or slightly smaller version, for about 60 million. And we are working closely with Niki Lauda and his team to make it the kind of #1 low-fares airline in Austria.
Michael, just you've touched on two things there about the Airbus aircraft and the opportunities that would come with the Lauda deal. But the question that goes around in our mind is how seriously you are about Airbus, or is it just a tactic to drive the Boeing prices down on the 737 MAX?
No, look, we've already secured a terrific pricing on the Boeing. I mean, the most exciting thing about the Ryanair story at the moment is in the spring of 2019, we take the first 5 of the Boeing 737-200s, the game changers. These are aircraft with 4% more seats, without any additional crew, 4% more seats and 16% lower fuel consumption. So this is a very exciting period in, I think, the growth story of Ryanair over the next 5 years. But we would like to have and develop a relationship with Airbus. Airbus have always been sceptical about Ryanair as a potential customer, but I think because they believe Boeing will undercut whatever offer Airbus make to us. And I think, you know, one of the original motivations for us when we first launched a bid for Aer Lingus back in 2006 was to have an Airbus operator within the Ryanair group. Laudamotion now gives us that opportunity. But the aircraft, I mean, the aircraft supply are very tight with Airbus at the moment. There's a lot of engine problems on the Neo deliveries. So it will be a challenge for the next year or two. The backstop is we can always grow Laudamotion with some of our, you know, the new Boeing aircraft. But we're not trying to put pressure on Boeing. Like, we have a great relationship with Boeing. We have aircraft orders that take us out to 2024, allow us to grow to 200 million customers. But this is an opportunity now to work with, and there's new management in Airbus, I think, to develop a relationship with Airbus. And I think if Ryanair, you know, we are Europe's largest airline, we should have a supply relationship with Boeing, and we should also have a supply relationship with Airbus. Not because either of them will compete against each other, but in a downturn, there will be opportunities with both Airbus and with Boeing. And for example, if something does happen to Norwegian at the end of this year, there will be a lot of those. I mean, they have huge order books. A lot of those aircraft will be floating around, and we would like to be able, you know, opportunistically be able to jump on some of them.
So looking ahead then, Michael, just briefly, what could you see Airbus being what percentage of your aircraft, or it's just a thought at the moment rather than a plan?
No, it's very much a plan. But I mean, at the moment, really, Laudamotion is only 20 aircraft of Ryanair's a 440 aircraft fleet. But I would like to see us with, you know, certainly the next 3 to 4 years, maybe have 100 Airbus aircraft. We will have 500 Boeing aircraft. So there's no reason that Airbus couldn't grow to be a 10 or 20% of the size of the fleet.